Welcome to the very first episode of Sparking Innovation. This is a podcast from Provisio, the largest Salesforce implementation partner solely for human services. I'm your host, Tom Moran. We are really excited to be launching this podcast. It's been a long time coming, and put simply, our mission on this show is to inspire nonprofits and government agencies to drive change in their communities by embracing change in their organizations. And we're going to do that in two ways. First, through conversations with industry experts, we're going to reveal how human services organizations can harness their data to become more efficient and effective for the people they serve. And second, we're going to speak with leaders from nonprofits and state and local governments who will share their personal innovation stories. We're going to learn how they use new technologies or strategies to become stronger organizations, and most importantly, what the positive impacts were on their clients and constituents. So that's our goal. Now, here's a bit more about us. Provisio is a top-tier Salesforce partner with unparalleled nonprofit and public sector expertise because many of us actually come from those worlds. So we truly understand the challenges mission-based organizations face and how to address them through strategic and technological innovation. And that all begins with a comprehensive data strategy. Provisio first helps organizations figure out what they even need from their data, and then we harness it to power customized Salesforce solutions, which automate processes, streamline workflows, and unveil new insights. And we also offer advisory services to help with strategic planning, change management, theory of change development. So if you work for a nonprofit or a state or local government and are interested in how Provisio can kickstart your innovation journey, contact us at provisiopartners.com. Today, we're diving into how to create a culture of innovation at a nonprofit, which is a very important thing. And I'm thrilled that Heath Parks is actually joining us on the first episode of the show. He's the Director of Information Systems at Cincinnati Works, which is a workforce development program dedicated to eliminating poverty. And also joining me is Provisio Chief Strategy Officer, Craig Maki. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. So Heath, why don't you just to start this thing off, tell us more about Cincinnati Works, and also the organization's innovation journey. I understand that you played a large role in spearheading that effort.
Sure. So Cincinnati Works has been around for about 27, almost 28 years now. I believe it founded in 1996. And so our goal is to eliminate poverty, in our community and hopefully beyond. And so we try to be a thought leader in the space and try to be one of those organizations that aren't afraid to innovate. And it was actually founded by two individuals, our founders, Dave and Leanne Phillips. And they decided that they wanted to tackle initially childhood poverty, but they spent an entire year kind of researching what that kind of looks like and what it is. And part of what they discovered is really to elevate children out, you really have to help elevate the parents out because it's kind of a cycle. And my wife actually has been a part of the organization for over 25 years. And so while I have not been with Cincinnati Works since then, I've been with them formally since 2015. I've been a part of their journey for a very long time now. And I can say that it's been a really interesting journey. They had a foundational principle of being data and kind of technology minded. And so from the very outset, they decided that, very early on, they went into an access database to track their data and their outcomes and everything else. And in 2009, they moved into Salesforce. And then I came on board in 2015 to really kind of help spearhead and augment the Salesforce Instant and analytics and eventually technology and more. And so really there was just a founding principle from the organization from the very start that the data and technology was something that we were going to embrace and not be afraid of, and always look at ways to kind of innovate through that. And that's something that that's just part of the culture and DNA of Cincinnati. We're not afraid to do different things and adapt as the world changes and how what poverty looks like. I mean, yes, the poverty rate stayed the same, unfortunately, for many years, but the methodologies and the demographics and some of the effects of that and how that kind of looks has changed in the last 25 years. And so if we still operated on the model that was, if we did everything based upon that model from 27 years ago, we wouldn't be effective in what we're doing. So that's really kind of the journey. And we can still continue to do that, not to take a look at, even what Salesforce has continued to do, what's also out there in the entire ecosystem as far as other technologies, how, um, you know, what was available technology wise back in 1996 is vastly different, right? Cloud computing wasn't even a thing, subscription based modeling wasn't even a thing. iPhones, iPads, none of these things really kind of existed to the degree that they exist now. And so it's just been a really rapid, um, it doesn't feel rapid sometimes. It definitely feels much more rapid, but it's been an evolving journey for Cincinnati Works to constantly kind of try to be on the forefront, which is challenging. I'm not going to lie, especially for a nonprofit. That's extremely challenging, but we're not afraid. For better or for worse, we are not afraid. Sometimes I think we could do with a little bit of fear, but that's a different story.
So before you guys had embraced Salesforce, I mean, what were some of these processes like? And I guess the before and after, right? So you guys have always been kind of at the forefront of embracing new technologies, but then you eventually did get on Salesforce. And how did that transform the way that you guys operate? And like, what were some of the light bulb moments, I suppose, for many employees when they truly grasped how impactful that new technology was for them?
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I guess I don't really think it's just one kind of light bulb kind of moment that kind of happens. I think it's more of a series of like, oh, okay, kind of moments that you have in the journey. And so, really, what precipitated part of the organization moving to Salesforce is that, GoldMine had kind of reached some of the limits of what they were able to do. Sometimes that's one of the challenges you have with a proprietary database, right? If you want to change a field, you want to do other stuff, sometimes you're kind of limited and with those kind of options. It's really about the flexibility that you have within the platform. And I think that's true for any organization. You want to be able to have whatever you're adopting for technology needs, you want to have some sort of adaptability to be able to make it fit to be what your unique case is for that. Because there's a lot of similarities, of course, across other nonprofits who are in our kind of realm, kind of trying to do what we're doing. But at the end of the day, how we're deciding to tackle that is going to be a little bit different than how another organization does. So being able to have that flexibility is key. And I think it's really helped us as an organization truly start taking, our data methodology and our technology methodology to another level because, you know, the world has just changed so much, especially even since 2015. I mean, since 2019, the pace of innovation and the pace of everything else has kind of happened, has just accelerated to the point to where it's very hard to kind of keep up. And without some technical people, it's kind of hard to be able to maintain. And throughout all of that, I think what happens is that you have the opportunity then to create this culture where you're showing the employees what is possible out of the impossible. A lot of times, you know, it's showing them like how the small things as we continue to innovate, and then I build new solutions and add new functionality because we're all constantly getting that, how that actually enhances their abilities to be able to do their things on a daily basis. It's it's like I call it, success by attrition. And what I mean by that is just it's a small series of steps a lot of times that really has the greatest impact. Yes, sometimes a technology advance has a great impact, but once that kind of fades, it's really about that maintaining of that culture and maintaining those little enhancements where you're bringing those attentions to the forefront, where you're just kind of showing, hey, here's what's possible now. Here's what's possible now. And so it's really just kind of having that and just kind of always being in communication with the staff to get their feedback on what's working and what's not working. Don't be afraid. I tell everyone, I'm just the guy that, and I don't mean to dismiss myself, but my job is to support them, as much as our members and our employers and all the other stakeholders. My job is really to support them, and I don't take anything personally. So I need to know what's working and what's not working so I can continue to hopefully make this tool one of the many tools that we have. I don't think it's just one thing. There's always technology that kind of helps you do something, but it's really about just that the continual reinforcement of what's kind of happening, because technology becomes so ubiquitous that I think a lot of people just take it for granted now, because it's just so much part of our culture. And so for me and for us, it's really just highlighting how how this drives to our organizational mission, and how this is going to impact our community in a positive way.
Sure. Now, has it been troublesome getting buy-in from staff during these incremental advancements in technology that you've done? I mean, do you ever get that pushback?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
changes. The only constant is change, and the only thing we're constantly complaining about is change, right? So, there's that kind of aspect. Um, and I will say that I think the last few years are definitely, everything that's happened, with the pandemic, and again, that can kind of be a touch point, but it's the reality is that, there's been just so much change that's kind of happened that a lot of people's appetite for change has really lessened because it's been difficult. Um, I think the biggest thing, and one of the things that I always try to do, and what we try to do as a culture, is to really, we've tried to, in the last few years, we've really truly trying to adopt a complete quality improvement, quality improvement mindset, of abandon, adapt, or adopt. And these small tests of change that we're doing. So these changes, as they're happening, there's a reason and a purpose behind them. And we make sure that we're communicating what those are. And we're tracking those small tests of change to see if we should adapt, abandon, or adopt some of these new things that we're trying to do. Because knowing what to not do sometimes I think is even more important than finding out what you need to do, right? Because you can get so enamored by the shiny things. And so I think by doing those kind of things, I think you can, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. I think you can lessen the perceived impact that changes has. And making everyone understand that it's not really about change necessarily for change's sake, but it's really more about, we all work in this role in this minds in this space where we have to improvise and adapt. So, a lot of communication with them, with the employees, a lot of one-on-one. I do job shadowing, even though there's a lot of stuff, I'm not necessarily member facing. I sit with the coaches and I see what they're doing on a regular basis. I sit with them so I can understand, and then we can have those more one-on-one conversations that sometimes aren't as beneficial when you're in a larger group. But um, it's just really talking with them, and really trying to listen, and then let them understand. I think also is how they fit in the larger scheme of things, and so those you can't just stop talking about it.
So you talked a little bit about the pandemic, and not to harp on that, but what it sort of forced the issue of moving people from the place of we can't to we know how, and computers and technology. It sort of ripped the Band-Aid off all that stuff. And then you were talking a little bit about that was a lot. That was a lot of change. And people are now in this, and it didn't dawn on me until you said that, and I started thinking, and I'm wondering if that's part of, it feels like the entities like Cincinnati that were already on the path, and then it kind of got a little steroids with the pandemic, and we got all, and now you're in this place, and tell me if I'm off or if it sounds right, of the organizations we're working with that are in that place are the ones that seem to be really diving into the concept of data and understanding things, because they've established, right? It's don't let great get in the way of good. You've got a good system. You've got a good platform. It generally works. People are generally happy. But you're now looking at all this data going, we probably should do something with this. There's probably something in this that we should use to improve. And how have you embraced that? Also knowing what you just said, which is people probably had enough change for a bit. We jammed a lot in there in 3 years. And how do we balance that moving forward? Because you're in a different place of your life cycle in this innovation journey than others might be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that in a sense that you know, I like to say that history presents you with a series of moments, forks in the road. What are you going to do? Like the Robert Frost kind of thing, I took the road less traveled kind of stuff. Um, you know, and I think for a lot of organizations, they saw the fork in the road. And, I'll be candid with you. I think that we could have done things a little bit differently. We did some things well, and some things not so well. Um, and I say that too, to simply say is that that's why I'm saying you can't be afraid. Like if anything, the last couple of years have taught us is that if you're really passionate about and serious about what you want to do as a mission, you can't be afraid to fail and you can't be afraid to succeed. And that is a very narrow path, a very narrow path to navigate because you don't want to be reckless, right? But you want to be bold and you want to not be afraid to try new things to get great because there's not many great organizations. If there were, a lot of these things wouldn't be issues that we have. And so, you know, it's really about the mindset you have, and it has to start from leadership down, right? If you don't have that buy-in from the leadership all the way down and everyone, it will not resonate. It will not feel true to everyone else that's there in the organization. Yes, I have some level of influence and things like that, but at the end of the day, my level of influence is limited to a certain extent, in certain situations. And so it has to be the top down. And I think it's about not being afraid to say we are going to innovate. And if you want to be a part of that, great. And if you don't, we'll help you find some place where you can be comfortable. But we're okay with being uncomfortable.
So, how has Cincinnati Works willingness to push itself to go to uncomfortable places, to take on bold initiatives with its data, actually resulted in better outcomes for its members and
Yeah.
for the people that you serve?
Yeah, we're seeing that. We've seen it in a lot of ways, and it's a continuing journey, right? Better outcomes doesn't necessarily mean, because getting people out of poverty is a very long game. It's not measured in days or months or weeks. It's measured in years. I mean, that's just the reality. Um, so not only in better outcomes, we've by leveraging the data during the pandemic, we saw some stuff. We kind of really leaned more into financial wellness for individuals. We always had a financial component, but we kind of leaned more into that because a lot of people had money because they were getting money, the stimulus and all the other kind of stuff. And so what to do with those kind of things. And so, a lot of our people that we work with, they rely on us to kind of help them navigate that. And so with that, we really saw them engaging a little bit more around the financial side of it, trying to understand what to be able to kind of do with some of that stuff and how not just to spend it to spend its sake, and so understanding that and then understanding the need to kind of help them. We also saw how so much of our population is impacted by predatory tax preparation services or, payday loans and all those kind of things, because that's where they're at. They prey on those individuals. And so, you get a tax loan, right? Because you're getting your tax thing early. And so we developed a tax prep program at the time to kind of help with that, where if you're a member, you get your taxes done for free. And it's also about education and doing that stuff. And so we're expanding those things. And so we leverage that information, that data that we collected during that time frame to know that, this is an area where we can be successful in and hopefully help educate, right? Because we now we have the ability to have the ear of city council and other stuff. So it gives us an opportunity to also leverage what we're learning, to the broader community to hopefully not just impact the people that we serve, but the broader community overall in general around some of these issues. One of the things that we've always seen that we've dealt with was we had a program where we were working with individuals who were violence impacted around gun violence and things of that nature. And we saw a really good success with that particular model of individuals who are trying to get out of that lifestyle into something different. And we saw some better retention rates and employers and some better engagement kind of rates. And so with that, we decided here recently just to expand what we're doing in that space. And so we just announced a new initiative that we're doing called Fair Chance, which is really about, it's traditionally called second chance, kind of stuff with people that were incarcerated. But we're doing it from it's not just those individuals. We're really looking at individuals, anyone that has been impacted by the justice system. So whether you've been incarcerated or you have a family member that was incarcerated, or, you've been impacted by that some way, it's about creating a program and offerings that address those unique situations specifically. We're not trying to make everyone fit into the buckets and models that we have, but taking a look at what's out there. And so that initiative, that's also a great example of initiative that we just decided we're going to do it and figure out how we're going to fund for it later on, because we decided that it was that important to us, because it does, we knew there was a good percentage of individuals that were coming to us. It was 30% plus that were impacted by this, not to mention everything else. And so this was an area that we just said that we're going to step into this space and not just do it how it's traditionally been done, but really try to look at it from a trauma informed care perspective about how to kind of work with those individuals. All those things were because we had done other things and gotten data around it and outcomes around it, and said, we need to do more here. Just like there's been other things that we've done in our outcomes and our measure that said, we need to not be in this space, And so those are just, I don't want to say they're small because they're huge, but they're examples of what happens when you get to the point where you're trying to let your data and what you're learning from that help you inform what to do and where to go and how to go. And again, be an example of not being afraid to be innovative, right? Not to say that you're trying to replace all these other kind of things. It's saying, we know what we do well, right? So let's take what we do well and apply this to this particular situation and see how we can do that, and then partner with other organizations to develop a full experience and solution for individuals in these particular areas.
So you talked about the data that came from the systems that you have driving the decision making, right? That's the thing we're all chasing. And then you fund the programs, and a lot of times that's the easiest part to think about, is like funding for programs. But how do you make sure during your budget process and your conversations with others, where it's fun to talk about funding new programs based off of data, but it's not always fun to say, and you're going to have to make some choices that you might not like to make sure that we continue to fund the technology of which this data is deriving from, and keeping that sort of above the line, rather than whatever we have left over we'll give to Heath and he'll continue to keep the wheels on the bus? How do you flip that narrative that there's reciprocity in that whole system of being able to do that and find things to fund, which is fun, but you got to fund the other stuff that's making the engine go?
Yeah. Well, if I had the answer to that, I'd probably be a much more successful.
You wouldn't be sitting here, would you?
I'd probably
be writing books.
I'd be giving some kind of talk. And I half jokingly say that, but I also just say is that I think, again, I think it has to be a culture within the organization. That's another example of one of the other things that we're doing as an organization. We're really kind of revamping even how we look at our budget. We're kind of almost, I don't know how other organizations necessarily do it, but for us now, really, like, we're almost treated like each department or area, it's kind of almost our own line of business, and each group has their budget that they're responsible for. And also then we're also tying that into any kind of funding activities that are related to outcomes. So each group basically knows, these are the things that you're responsible for, and here are the outcomes. And so when you kind of do that, by default, you get to have part of the conversation about, like, well, to get those kind of outcomes, you got to make sure that you have all the technology that you need, to be able to do that. Whether it's you know, enhancing what you currently got, or sometimes it means you might have to do something a little bit bigger. And so I think really what our organization is, again, we've never been afraid to do. But part of this is just, I've worked very hard to kind of just have a voice in my organization to talk about the things that we need, and that how I need to be brought in sooner rather than later when we're making these type of decisions. So I can let people know, like, can we do it? Do I need to build and do new things, and do we have the right other kind of technologies and stuff in place to be able to do that? And that's always going to be a natural ebb and flow and tuck and pull. I think organizations again have to get to the point to where they're able to start building in. I don't want to call it buffer, but I want it anticipating that you're going to need other funds throughout the year. Don't just look at what you're currently spending and say, okay, that's what we're going to spend next year, right? Because with subscription models, you have annual increases sometimes, right? You got to account for all those kind of things. And so I really just do think it's about constantly, you know, talking with the key stakeholders to make sure that we do have the technology. And I think part of this is just having a continued conversation around that. And it's more people really being able to educate funders to understand the infrastructure that's needed in place. To me, a perfect example of outside forces that are just making, having real world impact to current budgets is all the recent changes around cybersecurity from all the tech organizations, right? Because it's such a huge deal. There's so many breaches and everything else. And so Microsoft, Google, and all these other tech companies are putting things and policies and procedures in place that affects us. We have to up our tech budget because now we have to have some of these other things. And so it really it's just not being afraid to address those things. I mean, I think fear is what the scarcity and the fear is what drives a lot of individuals to just stay in organizations, to stay in that space of like scarcity. And it's almost a denial of reality of what's happening. And you just have to kind of face that as an organization and say the world's changed. It's a culture, it's a mindset, and it's just leadership. I hate to kind of, it feels like a cliche answer, but sometimes there's a reason why cliches are true, and so I really just think that it has to be that mentality from the top down. And I think things like this help. Honestly, I think the more we, again, just talk about these conversations and help educate funders and fundraisers about how important this is. It's no longer a luxury. It is it is an essential core function that you have to be able to have any kind of lasting impact. And so it's not, don't view it as a cost line item, view it instead as a value add that you are going to be doing for your organization that will pay dividends just in a different format later on down the road. I don't know if I really answered your question, but those are kind of some of my thoughts.
Yeah, well, as you said, if you had an answer, you wouldn't be sitting here. You'd be writing books and on tours, and we wouldn't be able to afford you on this podcast. So, yeah, I think that's the thing that we're all chasing and trying to evaluate. Sort of how do we get there? What is the right balance? I don't think it is one size fits all. It is organizational based. What feels good for you as an organization? But I couldn't agree more with your last statement that I think for years we were able to say, we'll get to the technology. We can wait for it. We don't need that quite yet. And I think that is absolutely not the case. And an incredibly risky thing not to move on as an organization, because your funding will be compromised. Your outcomes, your everything downstream will be compromised and driven by the absence or presence of technology and people like yourself in your organization that know what to do about it and with it.
Yeah, and like I said, I do think it's starting to shift. I mean, it's turning a giant ship, and I do think that it is shifting because you do hear more and more around funders being able to understand that. And I think a lot of it really is that not enough organizations are bold enough to really kind of ask. I think in a lot of ways, I think we've just kind of gotten to the point. It's become like used to, and so that's all you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you hear like, oh yeah, there's other organizations, but we can never find any. Well, every day I'm hearing about other new sources and other stuff. So that's part of it. Don't be afraid to kind of go out there and talk to that, and be active out in the community. Talk to other people. A lot of times that we get very insular, and that's one of the things that I love doing is that I don't want to just know my own opinion. I know what my own opinion is. I give it to myself all the time. But I want to be out there. I want to be doing things like this. I want to be out in the community. I want to be out there. So I'm not just listening to an echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
That my thoughts, that what I'm thinking isn't just mine. It's information that I'm gathering to help equip and learn across the board. And I think that's essential. I don't think enough people really, I'm not saying that, there's not a, don't do it, but I don't think enough people really make that time to go outside of themselves to really start seeking input from others, to give themselves an opportunity to become a little bit smarter. Honestly, I love being smarter. It's one of my favorite things.
We've certainly made us smarter today. So I appreciate you, speaking of, giving up time, I appreciate you giving us your time today to, talk about this. This was really great. So thank you to you, Craig, as well.
Thank you.
This wraps actually the first episode of Sparking Innovation. So again, thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. If you need a partner to help kickstart your innovation journey, contact us at provisiopartners.com. You can also find our website in the show description, and you can subscribe to this podcast to catch the next episode of Sparking Innovation. Thank you for listening.